I'm not opposed to incremental stuff. Like if there's a campaign to raise the minimum wage a little bit, okay. There's always cost of living and inflation. That's fine. But when you say no, it has to be jacked up by this much, that has negative effects. So we can talk about Bernie and his fight for 15 and how he doesn't pay his workers 15 and they're pissed.
No, and I love the communist math that he did to get them to show that it's almost 15. To get to the level where it looks like it's $15 an hour. He's going to cut their hours so they
Yeah,
work
well,
less.
he's well, okay. So what I heard, I don't know how much is accurate, but my understanding is that the way they were working is that it was salary rather than hourly, but they were expected to work something like 60 hours a week. So then, if you do the math, then they're making less than 15 an hour. It's like 11 or 13 or something low, and they're not happy. And so I think if they're paid the same salary and he cuts the hours so it's less than 60 hours, that's an improvement. That is helping the people out. But he's losing the productivity, and if he did it the other way and increased the wages, he'd be losing the money. But the thing is, it just shows you that there's a downside to hiking
Yeah,
up people's wages like that.
listen, it is total downside. Like for the longest, I had a job in high
But by
school.
the way, I'm
Uh,
sympathetic to the people working for him, though.
I totally am, but
Because it sounds like they're being exploited a bit when they're working 60 hours a week and they're not being paid 15. And then he's like, we need a $15 minimum wage federally. And he's not paying them that. And they're working 60
and he's
hours a
not,
week. I'd be pissed.
and he's not even doing it out of
And if they don't get overtime, at least, if I'm understanding it correctly, I think they might be changing it. But to my understanding, it was salary, meaning there's no overtime. So that is kind of messed up.
it goes to show, like, I don't even think he's doing it out of some sort of like,
I think that's how people do business.
yeah, and I don't think Bernie is. The only reason Bernie is doing this is for optics. Is somebody started to look into this and it looked bad.
Well, it's
So this was,
the people working for him got pissed because they did the
yeah.
fucking math. They're working 60 hours a week and they're not getting paid a lot, and they did the math on it, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
Well,
Which is funny.
well, it's not like Bernie has ever run a business before. All my life I've worked. I worked since I was a kid, all around Manhattan, like doing jobs like selling shoes. In a shoe store, like in a clothing store, I would be like one of those people that would get you your shoe. You try on your shoe. I'd get you your size jeans and then like put it away and fold it, shit like that. What mop the floor. I lost my job right at the time I was starting college. I lost that job to illegal aliens. And I don't think I was paid. I was paid off the books too. I was paid in cash off the books, so I didn't get any social security. I didn't get any sort of like workers comp or anything like that. But what are you gonna do if you're poor? You need a fucking job.
Yeah.
No one's gonna hire you. You know, it, and employers. You can kind of make fun of them or insult them, I should say, and say they're evil people. But at the end of the day, you have a payroll to meet. You don't have this money. Doesn't literally grow. It doesn't grow on trees. So
Yeah,
this
well,
guy
they,
is
they
one.
screw over the small businesses too with the
Yeah,
minimum wage stuff, and it's not. I think it's good that there is a minimum wage. I
I
just
do
think
too.
you have to watch out for inflating it too high for liberal reasons or whatever, because it has consequences that are negative, and it should
You,
really be determined by the market and be supply and demand, and
well,
securing the borders would just naturally make wages rise, certainly for
it would. It
certainly
would.
for working class people.
One of the things I've come to this is sort of my way of thinking is I always think that for government jobs there should be a minimum wage. There should be this and that. But with the counter thing on that is if you work for the government, you're not allowed to go on
Well,
strike.
there are
You know,
loopholes for the minimum wage too, by the way, and not that I
there is.
necessarily think that it's bad or it's all exploitive. But the thing is, if you're an independent contractor doing a little bit of work here and there, there's different ways to compute wages. There's volunteer work, which is free. So there's all kinds of stuff. But this,
Yeah, like farm hands don't make minimum
and
wage.
there's people who get tips don't have to get minimum wage either, but they tend to work. They make more money with the tips.
And independent contractors don't, like you said. There's a lot of loopholes to it. The minimum wage. At the end of the day, we're talking about something that, at the end of the day, having a minimum wage isn't going to save the economy. You need jobs. Everything is
No, I
being
mean
automated.
it's more like a safety net for working poor, essentially.
Yeah. What you need is, um, first of all, in New York, you have uh, I don't know why. I mean, maybe, but in California, San Francisco, New York, you have the rise of work. I don't know how my parents were able to buy a house on their salary, but they did. God bless them. I was able to buy a house because I made significant cash, but they struggled to save all this money and they bought a house. I don't think an American in New York, it's impossible now to buy a house in New York unless you make a lot of money. I keep thinking that maybe this is a real estate bubble
Yeah,
in these
well, I
rich
think
cities.
so. Yeah, well, in California too, real estate's expensive.
It's one of these days. Someone's not going to be able to afford the how do people live in New York?
Well,
That I don't get it.
yeah, I always joke about San Francisco that all those droves of homeless people, that those are people, they actually have jobs and they're making like 50,000 a year, but it's a little expensive in San Francisco, so they're
Yeah.
homeless.
Well,
You can get a
back in the
cardboard box for that.
Well, all those people that are homeless in San Francisco and in Los Angeles, etc. These are people.
Some of them have jobs.
Some of them have jobs. Some of them would have been able to afford a cheap apartment doing like day labor shit back in the day. But nowadays, that's not possible. And that's all because of these
I
liberals
knew a guy
gentrifying.
that lived in his car that I worked with.
I did too. Don't I
I
knew
mean,
a guy that lived in his car.
that's fairly common.
Yeah, I knew a guy who lived in a van actually.
Was it down
Um,
by the river?
yeah, New York is an island, so yeah, it was. He lived in a part of Queens. He would just park it there. Because he knew it was all factories, and he knew there's nothing there. So you just park the car. There was a lot of garages there, so you can park your car there, and you can kind of be left alone. But he lived. He was going to college, and he lived in his van. Um, and he would tell me all these things that um, uh, how do you go to the bathroom in a van? He told me this entire thing, and he goes, you know what? He told me it's not that bad. You know,
Yeah.
I, he was able to save a lot of money so he can afford to go to college and get a job. And then he actually joined the military later on. He graduated college and then he joined the military. Um, I don't know why he didn't do it backwards, but I think at the time um, uh, he was. I think he was too young to go to the military because he was like 17 years old, living in a van. He was going to college. Real smart kid. Graduated college or high school early. Like he was in advanced placement classes, like I was. But he graduated early. But he was living in a van. I always felt bad for him because why is it? But he goes, I'm on my own. My parents, abandoned me, and I'm living in this van. I'm doing work on the side and I'm supporting it. And then as soon as he turned 18, he joined the military. And then he graduated college like really quick too. Like as soon as he graduated college, he was 18 years old. He joined the military. So I know people like that too. Everyone thinks in New York, everyone's rich and everything. But no, I knew people that were deep in poverty. I knew a kid who went to LaGuardia Community College in the day, and then at night I'd see him panhandling on the subway, and he would have this fake limp, like he was like handicapped. He was totally not handicapped, but he would pretend he was handicapped to beg for money on the subway. I didn't see him as a scammer or anything. He was just doing what he needed to survive. I didn't know what his situation was, but there he was in my. I would see him in the subway. He didn't recognize me or anything, but there he was in my class the next day, walking normally. And then the other day, and then I see him on the
Be
subway.
even
He's doing.
better if he's like blind and has like a cup selling pencils,
He he was
and then he's
he
walking around seeing.
he had these cerebral palsy
Yeah,
braces on the
that's
subway,
hilarious.
and then
And then they're
I,
gone. It's a
yeah.
miracle.
So I've seen that, and it's
Okay, now if
it,
he has actual braces on, I'm gonna say. I mean, I'm
no,
not.
no, he
I'm
had
not
the
saying the law should throw the book at him. But that's definitely a
no,
scam. There's
no,
no
it
question
wasn't,
about
it
that.
wasn't, it wasn't braces. It was those poles that you hold on to in both hands.
Yeah.
So
Okay. But
you
I'm just
know,
okay. That's clearly a scam. But hey, whatever.
of course it was a scam. But I didn't know what. Maybe he was poor. He needed the money.
Yeah.
Is what I was trying to say at the
Well, he's
time.
putting on a
You
show.
know,
He's an entertainer.
you know. Back then I was a little liberal, so when I saw that, I was like, "Oh man, it's the man forcing him to do this." Nowadays, you see that as an adult, you're a little bit more conservative, and you say, "What a fucking scammer!" It's just how you look at it. Was he a scammer or was he? Yeah, he was a scammer. Did he need the money? Probably. I don't know. Was it
I
ethical?
mean,
No, it wasn't
there,
ethical.
yeah, there are worse things to do though
Yeah.
than pretend to be, crippled, disabled. You have
No,
to get used to all the. It's really annoying that to go along with all the words changing, and then you realize that it was all bullshit the way they
yeah,
changed all the
yeah.
words.
Listen, when I was a kid, there was this button factory in Manhattan that went out of business.
Because the word
Like,
crippled, it doesn't. It's actually in general, it's a neutral word. It's just a little bit old.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It doesn't
You,
have to
you
be
know,
negative.
when I was junior high school, I think there was this button company in Manhattan. They made buttons, and they went out of business because they couldn't compete with Chinese-made buttons. So they were throwing out all these buttons in the garbage, and my mom saw that they were throwing all these buttons out in the garbage. We're talking like a dumpster full of buttons, and my mother and put me and my sisters into that fucking dumpster, and we were like shoveling buttons out by the scoopful, and then we would put them in a plastic bag, and then we would sell them in the streets of Manhattan for like $5 a bag, and that made us be able to like that actually sustained us for a long fucking time. We would sell these buttons at $5 a fucking pop, and people would buy it from us. You know, so I did that street selling shit too. I was one of these immigrants with a
That's
fucking
actually
cart.
that's actually you're performing a service. So instead of them being wasted, then they're going to somebody who wants them, and you're making a profit. That's good. There's
Well,
actually
well,
nothing wrong with
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's how I saw it too. Like they're throwing these buttons out. I'm like, fuck that shit. I'll sell it. We just filled up the bag, taped it, sold it for $5 a bag. It's a mixed. It was a mixed bag of buttons, and that was able to feed our family for months. I'm not even kidding. So I've been through those situations too. And I'm sure I violated some sort of child labor law by selling buttons on the streets. That's what I'm trying to say. So all these kind of laws, at the one hand, you're sympathetic to them, but at the other hand, a family like mine that was poor,
There are loopholes to
yeah,
various labor laws too, though.
I'm
A lot of
sure.
times, kids can be working for their family under certain conditions.
They had me fucking on the street selling buns. Motherfucker.
I'm just saying it's not always illegal. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
it might be, but it might not be. I don't know.
I bring that up to my mother all the time. You had me on the fucking street selling buttons with like a fucking gypsy. You had me on the street. I was yelled at her, but what's she gonna do? I love the lady. What's she gonna do? We were starving. So you got to do what you got to do.